Hi everybody. So in this video, we are going to import our house that we made in Blender, and we are going to look at some of the tricks of doing that. And then we will make a door that works on a hinge, and then we will have the door be locked unless you get enough prizes, and we'll go over getting prizes and on trigger enter. And yeah, that all sounds fun. There's something else we're going to do too. Oh, we're going to put the score on the screen for the UI. So a bunch of stuff that we've got to do. So I imported the house into my project folder. So I have the house we made down here in the project folder, and I will drag it onto the stage. Okay, so there it is. There's a couple things we can do. If it's not the right size, you can change it here. So I might want to make it just a tiny bit bigger. So I'm going to say 1.25 and say apply, and that will make it larger. And that way it's larger if I wanted more houses in there. That scales it once when you import it rather than having to scale it during runtime. And what else are we going to do? The other thing we should look at here is materials. So right now, here's our house. Let's see, there's our cabin. If I want to change the color of the cabin, it's grayed out. I can't make any changes to it. And that's no fun, because that's part of the fun, is that we can change stuff once we get it into Unity. So in order to do that, click on the house in the project folder, go to materials, and say extract materials. And say choose asset folder, that's great. And now here's the materials that we made are now brought into Unity. So if I wanted to change the roof color, I could go here and change the roof color, and it's all there for me. So or for example, like, I don't know how good you might want to play with the the opacity of the windows. Well, the window cabin glass is here. Cabin window, I forget which of these is the one that actually is. I think it's cabin window. And maybe we want to change, yeah, there. Maybe you want a little less blue and a little more just gray frosted, but maybe a little lighter, right? And you can play with that way. But if you don't extract them, you won't be able to have at it. Oh, look at that. Looks like it's different up there. Okay, anyways, let's say that's perfect. And let's take this guy. Let's take our whole house. Notice our house is one object, but it has three children. So when we exported them, we didn't actually join them, and this way they're separate so that you can do separate stuff to it. And that's actually going to be handy for us. So let's rotate the whole thing this way, just so that when we walk over to it, it's not very far from us. And it's right next to our big hole. Okay. And so that's good. So let's try just seeing what happens when we walk up to it. So I'm going to walk up to the house, and that's great. And then I can walk right through the house. Okay, so probably that's not what you want. You probably want that house to be solid, like houses are. So let's go to the, so if I go here to the cabin itself, so I'm not on house, I'm on the child, which is cabin. And I want to say add a component, and I want to add a mesh collider. Okay, so that mesh collider is now going to make a collider that's the shape of the component. Convex will not have the holes in it. but there's times for collision that's handier. But in our case, we want to be able to walk through the door, so we just want regular. Um, and now we can go ahead and play, and let's see if that worked. Okay, we bump on the door, and now we can go through and go through. If you're not able to get in your door, go to your player capsule, and you might want to change your radius and your height of your character controller, these radius and height here, and that's how actually big your collider is. So if your collider was too fat, you wouldn't fit through the door. I can't remember what it was at. It was working, so I'll leave it alone. You can see inside of here, you can see the actual radius of the interior, and that's our actual collider, not the blue of the outside of the that's our collider for things colliding into us, but this is our actual collider for physics, for bumping into things. A little different because we have a character controller. Okay, so now what do we do? Now we need to make a door. Make a door. Okay, so let's, obviously you'll build a beautiful door in Blender and put it in place here, but let's remove some variables and make a door just out of 3D primitives, and we'll have it free floating outside of here, and then we can put it in the door and make it work later. So in order to do that, I need, back at my menus, here we go. I'm going to go game object, 3D object cube. Great. And we'll make this. So we need to make a door. You need a door and a door frame. So let's make this the frame. Like that. Great. We'll make it a little bit bigger. Okay. Awesome. Door frame. And now let's make a door also. So we could duplicate that. I'm going to slide it over. And let's go make it bigger on this axis. And let's slide it over. Okay, so there's the door frame. There's the door. Now you need a couple things here. We need our door frame to have a rigid body. Rigid body 3D. And we need that rigid body to be is kinematic. So that means it's physics can happen to it, because we're going to put a hinge joint on there. It needs to know what it's attached to, but it also isn't. We don't want our door frame flopping around and having gravity and doing all sorts of stuff. The other thing is the door itself. It also needs a rigid body, and its rule is that we don't check is kinematic, but we do check off use gravity. So we don't want gravity to make the door fly off its hinges and float away off into space. We want to turn gravity off, but it needs a rigid body for the physics to work. Okay, and I'm going to name these guys here. Call this one door, and call this one door frame. Enter. Okay, excellent. Now we need to add a hinge joint. So go add, click on the door, go add component. I'm going to say hinge joint. And you'll notice here in hinge joint, it says connected body. So that's the thing that the joint is, that's the frame that the joint is going to hinge off of. What is this hinge hinging to? And in our case, it's going to be the door frame. So we can take door frame, drag it into that spot there, and that's what the frame is hinging around. Now, if you turn on this little guy, it will show you the actual sort of representation of the hinge. And right now, it's going to rotate on that axis as if it was a doggy door. And so you want it to flip over so it's on the y-axis. So we take this one off of X and put this one on Y. And now it's going to rotate the right direction. Now, right now it would rotate like a revolving door, so we want the hinge to actually be over on the left-hand side there. So we can use this guy here to move the hinge over. So it's a little more accurate. Sure, wherever. And I'll just move it down so it's in the middle of the door. So it feels right. I don't think that matters so much, but what the heck. Okay, so rigid body on the door, no gravity. Rigid body on the door frame is kinematic. And now let's see if it works. I go over here, I run into it. Beautiful. Let's get it going. So that's awesome. See how it's swinging all the way around and through itself. It's not, probably maybe not exactly what we want, but it is acting like a door. So in order to make it stop, we can, the hinge has some properties here, and we want use limits. And then if you click on this guy again to see it, these little hammers become the range that the door can swing. And you can see you can change that by changing these numbers, but the little hammer gives you a little visual distinction. And also if we say use spring and give these a little bit of a value, it will spring it will spring shut and damper, which is like how quickly will it go back to 0. Target position 0, which is great, because that's going to be totally closed. And that should feel more like a door. Let's try it again. Go through here. Yeah, it's way more like a door. There, springing shut. So higher the spring, the quicker it'll shorten. I'm not sure why. Maybe I'll play around with these numbers. You'll find a balance that you like. It's acting a little more like a swinging door now. So maybe like a higher number. Okay. So now let's, I've got some prizes that I made here. So these are just spheres. You know, once we're doing this properly, we'd make some awesome prize in Blender, and then we'd make them prefabs and drag them out. But for right now, these are just our goal. And I put this yellow material on them to make them special, and I put a prize tag on them. So added a tag and then assign each one the prize tag, and so they're ready to go to be little prizes. So now we need to have a script where we run into the prize, and it makes a score, and it makes that score go up. Okay, so let's look at doing that. I'm just double checking here. Okay, so what do we need? We need to go to our player capsule. So on our capsule here, we will have a script, and let's call it, new script. Call it get prize. Call it get prize door. Create an ad. Okay. Let's open it. So awesome. So what do we need? We need a script that gets, okay, first of all, we're just going to do the collision, right? Hang on, I'm updating my, we'll update the collision and then we'll do the UI afterwards. Okay, so we need a score. We need a public int score. Makes sense. That's going to be our variable that holds the score. It has to be public because we need to be able to get this from another script, right? And we want to set the score equals 0. Score equals 0. Yes. Oops. Why didn't that work? Score equals 0. Sorry about that. And we want an on trigger enter. So void on trigger enter. And we want collider col. So col will be the thing that we've collided into. And we want to make sure that it's got a tag on it that says prize. So we say if col dot compare tag. This is the quick way of doing it. Prize. Then we want to go score plus plus. That's going to add 1 to our score, which we should be able to see because it's a public variable. And then we want to get rid of the prize so that you can't just run into it every time. So we can say destroy dot col. Oops, sorry. Col dot game object. Okay, so that's going to destroy the thing we ran into if it has the prize tag on it, and it's going to make our score variable go up by 1. Okay, let's see how many typos I made. I go back here. No typos. How's that possible? All right, so there's our player capsule. Let's try this. If we scroll down there, you can see our score down here. And as I walk around, score went up 1, 2, 3. That's beautiful. Okay, so let's have the score show up on the screen. Oh, I'm cheating a little bit because I already have it. So let's get this off the screen so we can put it back on. And yes, so for this, to make the score on the screen, we need to use something called Text Mesh Pro. And Text Mesh Pro is under Game Object, and then UI, and then Text Mesh Pro. And so it does something, it does 2 things here. It makes a canvas, and then it puts text on the canvas. So you can have multiple texts on one canvas, or pictures or other stuff. But this canvas is sort of this theoretical thing that floats in space. You can see the canvas in scene view, because there it is there. But that's not a really great representation because it's sort of floating off in space. It doesn't make any sense. So the best way to actually see it is in game view. So even if it's not playing, we can go to game view and we can see our text. So here's our text here. I can call this score. Okay, and I'm going to, and now we can play with the position of score with these guys here. So let me scoot it over. Let's make it up by the top. Okay, that's great. So now we need to have the script talking to the score, and that's a question of going back to Blender here, and there's my score. And so in order to talk to TextMesh Pro, we have to extend Unity here with using TM Pro. And then we need to say it's going to be a public TextMesh Pro GUI. So TextMesh Pro, and then GUI, and then let's call it score text. Okay, so this is making an empty space that we will drag our text into that space in the inspector to get it go in there. And we can say here now score text dot text equals score. Obviously you can have this say whatever you want. And then plus score I think you don't need to say toString anymore. You could just say score, but this is taking that integer and making it a string and putting it into the text, and so that might be necessary. We can test that, try to get rid of it and see if it still matters. Okay, so that's great. That's going to set it to the right text when it first starts, and then every time we update the score, we should update the text also. So I just copied and pasted that. It's going to change the score to there, and I'm going to save it. And now I go back here, and now I wait for it to load. Okay, and we go to the player capsule, and here's our door prize script. There's our text score. This is what I always forget to do. We drag our text from here into there, and now let's try playing. One, 2, 3, beautiful. So the logic on the door still doesn't work, but we've got a score now that's going up. Now we just need to make it so the door unlocks when you get the right amount of prizes. So let's go back to scene view and let's write code that does that. Now it makes sense to me that code goes on our door rather than on the human, on the player. So let's go to the door here, and let's add a component, new script, and we'll call it just door lock. Okay, create and add. I guess the other one could have been just called score. Anyways, whatever, door lock, and we'll say save. And let's double click this guy. And now we need a couple things. We're going to need the public game object for the player, right? So that because the door is going to go to the player, get the score off of the script that's on the player, and decide whether it should unlock itself or not. So we're going to say public game object player. Game object with capital G? Yes, I think that's right. And we'll say private rigid body RB. Okay. And we'll say RB equals get component, and then rigid body. And then this guy. So my rigid body is getting the rigid body component on the door, right? And putting that into this variable. And then we can say here RB dot freeze rotation equals true. Awesome. So freeze rotation is going to mean that it won't rotate at all. So that's sort of nerfing what we did with the hinge. You push on it and it will freeze up and not. So it's locking the door essentially. So now we need to check our score. So we can say if player dot get component and then what do we call it? Get prize door, we called it score. That was simple. Get component we want get prize door is the name of the script. Dot score is greater than 2. So this is go to the player, which we have to make sure we drag into our empty slot. Go to the component called get prize door, grab the public variable, and this is why we made score public, grab the public variable called score and see if it's greater than 2. And if all of those things are true, we can do RB freeze rotation equals false. And that's going to release the door, and then it should work like a hinged door once again. Okay, so I'm going to save that. I'm going to go back here. And we've got our door. And there's our door lock script. There's player. We have to remember, drag our player into there so it knows where to find that variable. And now let's try playing it. Okay, I go here. Can't go through the door. And then I go here and get my score goes up, which is great. And now the door opens. Sweet. So now you can take this guy, throw it into the actual door. You can embed that door frame right into the thing. You could even take the door frame and say, okay, I don't even want to render the mesh of it, but just still have it be there. I would make a special door frame then rather than using the mesh of the cabin itself, just because it makes things